Here is the issue with dealing with multiple vantage points on the horizon line. So you have your horizon line. Again, starting out just doing 1 point perspective. 1 point perspective. Let's do this here. 1 point. Let's do this again. This is a simple box. Alright, so this issue is dealing with being able to turn objects in the same environment. Alright, so you have like one shape that's in perspective. 1 point. Alright, now, again, the next issue is being able to deal with being able to rotate objects within the same space. Alright, so with that, you add vantage points that are dedicated to that one shape that you're looking to turn in perspective compared to this first object here. So let's say I do a left and right vantage point on this particular piece here. Alright, and again, as what you've done before, you create an object. The next object in a different vantage point that is now turned to the original object itself by creating vantage points that are solely dedicated for this new now square. Alright, now say again you want to create the next object again at another angle on the other side here. Let's say I use this one particular vantage point I already have, and let's say again I use another, create a new vanishing point for the next shape. So again, nothing has changed. The process is still the same. For creating a new object within this environment. Now, the things that I want you all to recognize is that one, and you can see because you're using different vantage points for different objects now, you're again, they're all in the same environment now. So, when you get objects that are turned in perspective in the same environment, you have to create new vantage points for that new object. It's no different than what you've already done before. Alright, now if you have a room, right, if you have a room in 1 point perspective, and so now you want to create a you know, you get everything in that room at 1 point perspective, and now you want to create, you know, like a chair. You know, for instance, a chair in 2 point perspective, so you create vantage points in 2 point perspective that will help you create that chair now that you're turning it in that environment for 2 point. Alright, and so along with creating your space, this space here, the one thing you always want to recognize when you're dealing with multiple shapes in an environment, alright, is dealing with the foreground, middle ground, background. Alright? So if you notice, there is overlapping with these shapes here. And here you see, this is why it's important to say, if I draw through these, I've drawn through them. And you see, this is why it's important to recognize the four corners of a shape. Multiple shapes now. Alright? Because you're starting to see, as you're showing these four corners in this environment, you're seeing how these four corners line up against each other. Alright? And so when you recognize these four corners for each little volume, each little shape that you have, you're seeing here the shape, or at least the spacing, that's involved. So knowing how this corner is lined up against this corner here, you're seeing the spacing that's being created between these shapes from overlapping. Alright? So this is why I've said previously how important it is that you know where the four corners are at in a particular environment. Because if you don't know these shapes here, all three of them, more than likely, if you don't recognize them, that they will more than likely run up on the side of each other. So if you're dealing with an environment in a room, you're looking at chairs or tables or desks or whatever running up on a wall, looking like they're running up on a wall, looking like they're sitting on top of each other. Alright? And that's what you don't want. And so to avoid those issues, you're going to want to make sure that you ground your objects. And by grounding your objects, I will show you here as an example. Alright? And so again, I'll just do this in one point, simple one point, the very first piece here. You have your horizon line. Alright? And you are creating a room in 1 point perspective. Alright, so you have your room. In 1 point perspective. So, as I said in the class, is that you want to make sure your objects are grounded. And so for those, again, I'm sure you all have seen a floor plan. Alright? And so, again, if you're looking at now, when you're looking at now a floor plan, let's say you have an object that's here, object that is here. Say now you have another object that is 45 degrees to this entire room. So now you create an object that is roughly about 45 degrees in that room. Alright? So now, this is your basic floor plan. Alright? In perspective. Alright? If you were to look at it from what a normal view of a basic floor plan would be, alright? So then you would look at a floor plan like this for this room. You've got that first object, number 1 here, that's roughly right about there. Object number 2, right about there. Alright? Object number 3, roughly at about 45 degrees to the entire room. It's roughly like that. Alright? So now you're trying to take this floor plan Again, creating a floor plan, if you're not quite sure how objects sit within a room, alright, when you know you have to turn it into perspective, you create a floor plan. So basically you know where these objects sit at geographically to each other, which is what this diagram is. So now, alright, you take the diagram in perspective, and now you want to build up from the base. So now you start to build up. No matter what these objects are, you're building up on that shape. Alright? And so overlapping objects creates depth. Alright, so this angle here is at roughly 45 degrees. You gotta figure out where those perspective angles are, the vanishing points are. Alright, so now we have these various objects in perspective. Alright, since this one here is in the center, is at one point, so you're going to see a very eye level sort of view for that particular object here. That's dead center. Alright, so that's how you make sure that when you create multiple objects in an environment, you want to make sure that they're grounded, which is what I'm showing you here. These objects here are now grounded on this floor plan. But now when you want to turn them into perspective, into 1 point perspective, and now this other object into 2 point perspective, you know what it is that you have to do for that. Alright, so the next thing I want to show you, which I showed you in the demo and during the class session, is creating a spiral staircase. Alright, so a spiral staircase again consists of creating ellipses in perspective. Alright, so let's say you have a square in perspective, and like as you know now to create how to create ellipses in perspective, you want to dissect that ellipse, or at least that square, into a pie chart. Okay. So now you create that pie chart. So now you're creating your ellipse in perspective. Alright, so get your ellipse in perspective with a pie chart. And in the center here now, the center of this pie chart is your anchor. So what you would do, this is your anchor now. For your spiral staircase. Alright? And on this anchor, you create little tick marks that are, let's say these little tick marks are equally spaced apart on this anchor. Alright? And so as I've shown you previously on that little diagram how to create a floor plan, right? And how when you create that floor plan, now you want to build up on that floor plan. Alright? And what you do is you get all these different little pie sections, and you take each little pie selection, you treat them separately as a whole. Alright? So, with this pie chart, you take each little pie selection as a whole. Treat them separately. So, from the corners here on this pie chart, outside corners, raise up. From the anchor position now, you make a connection. Alright, for your first staircase, first stair in the spiral staircase. Now, on the far side of this first little pie, take the outside edge, you bring that up, and now on the ground plane, the next corner of your pie chart here, that you raise that up. Alright? Again, now you're going from the anchor to the new corners of your pie chart. And what you're going to notice is that as I go around this shape here, that you'll notice the rotation of the staircase. Alright? So now you take the leading edge now of the pie you just finished of the step. You take that, you bring that up. Now on the ground plane, the next corner, you bring that up. Alright, to create, again, your other staircase. Using the anchor, now you have your next staircase in perspective. Again, the leading edge now, here, you bring that north. On the ground, on the next corner of your pie chart, you bring that north. Right, now you create the base of that from corner to corner. Your next anchor here. Alright, you're going to get a look, roughly, at least from this particular angle. You have an angle of the staircase, like this. Again, you can see the rotation. Again, you make your way around that pie chart. This here now is your leading edge. Now, you bring this up a little bit north. Now your next corner in your pie chart, you bring that north. You have your base. Alright. So now, on the anchor, now, to help create, and depending on the angle you choose, it's going to be very, very shallow. Alright? So now take the leading corner, the leading edge now. In the next corner of this pie chart, you bring that north. Alright? So now, again, looking at this here, you're looking at an angle now that is very eye level. Alright? So this step here is very eye level. Alright? So again, I'm going to take this leading corner, the next pie chart now. So now at this level, now you're going to start looking at the bottom of your next step. So you bring these edges north. There's the base of it. And so now you're going to look at an edge, and what I'm darkening in here is the bottom of your next staircase. Right? So if I were to rotate it now to this next edge, so there's my tick mark there. Here's my other leading edge on the ground floor. So now you're looking at the very bottom. So what I'm going to do now is darken in the spaces where it looks a little confusing, but so now I will darken in. Here is the top step. The next top step. Again, you see the rotation being made. Right, there's one step there. And again, as it goes around, this here is more eye level. Now this step here, now you're looking at the very bottom of the step. And this here is the next bottom of the step. And again, as you can see, it's all shaped like a pie chart. Alright? Again, you take this next edge, leading edge, and it goes all the way around. So this was here. So I would take this next leading edge here, which is almost here, right on this anchor. And I go from this edge here now, from the very first step that I created, and you bring that edge north. Alright? So now you have the next step. Again, it's going to resemble like a pie. Very shallow now in perspective. Alright? And all you're doing now is just rotating it all the way around. And so, again, you see that rotation being made. Alright, so if you were to put railings on this, alright, you'd have, in a sense, a railing that would go like this. So this here would be a railing going around. On your stairs. So that's how you create your spiral staircase. For those that want to do a spiral staircase. Alright, so now the next thing is to do a regular staircase. Alright? So say now I'm just going to do this in 2-point perspective of a regular staircase. Alright. So you have your horizon line, 1 point, 2 point. Alright. And you create the shape that represents the staircase. Alright, so now I have a shape that represents the staircase that I want to do. Again, like I said, there are 2 different ways to do this. Alright, in creating a staircase. Alright, one way is to say I'm using from my right vantage point here. You take a right vantage point here and you create a vertical along that vantage point line. Alright? And you pick a spot on the angle that you want in your perspective. So from this point here to make the bottom corner here on my shape, again, you create a diagonal. Alright, from the nearest corner, you get the far corner to create the angle. And again, where it intersects here would be the platform. Alright, so we're going to create a two-floor staircase. Alright, and again, on this back edge here, you create little tick marks that are like evenly spaced apart. Okay, and from this right side vanishing point, you create a connection through those tick marks. Alright, and again, and where it intersects on this diagonal here, alright, you start to see the development, at least from a side view point of view. You start to see the development of your staircase from one side. Alright, and so from the corners now, alright, you create a connection to the opposite side of your, to the left side vanishing point, to create your staircase. And just by using these guides and your vanishing point, you can see how it all starts to come together. Again, without doing a lot of work. You see your staircase coming together. Alright? So again, now let's say you want to do the two-floor staircase. Alright? So now, again, on the left-hand side, you take this vanishing point, create a vertical going north, and again, roughly about at the same height as you did on the other side, on the opposite side of it. Alright? And now from the opposite side vanishing point, you create a diagonal for the staircase. From here, now you create the height of the staircase based off your vanishing points. So now here you have the shape and placement of your next staircase. Alright, and again, along this back edge, again, you're creating little tick marks on the back edge there, and using the right side of the vanishing point here, you're creating diagonals for your staircase. And again, like we did before, you're seeing with very minimal effort your staircase come together just by making sure you create the guides. now you have a staircase. In perspective. So that's how you create a two-floor staircase.